Welcome back to Morgan on Purpose, the podcast. This is episode number 2, and I am thrilled to welcome Courtney Ranstrom to the show. Courtney is, in fact, a relation, so it's not Courtney Ranstrom, no relation. It is Courtney Ranstrom, relation. And the relation is she is, in fact, my sister, and I have known her all of my life. She's my older sister. But Courtney is not just my sister or a family member. She's also been my business partner in various capacities for nearly 20 years. Yikes, right? Alert, that's a lot. Courtney is a fellow financial advisor, and her work focuses on women, how they can manage their finances in a way that supports and empowers them. Welcome, Courtney, to the podcast.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
This will be fun. Let's dig in. All right, so financial planning for women. What does that mean to you? What does specialized financial planning support for women look like? Why is it important?
So I don't actually think that it's that like women and men have different financial planning needs if you just take, look at a woman or look at a man. It's but society has placed a lot of different demands on women that men often don't have. For example, women, do about 2/3 of the unpaid labor in the US. It's higher globally. Women, they take time off of work to care for children, to care for aging family members. So that's, gaps in income, which is also gaps in saving. If you're not working, you're not putting money into a 401k. And then women also live longer. They also are 80% of those diagnosed with autoimmune diseases. So, healthcare expenses can be higher. So I think when you're really looking at it, based on where women are at today in the US, the financial planning needs to be different. Now, if a man comes to me and says, I'm the primary caretaker of the family, I'm trying to work through all of this stuff and I have these risks, ahead of me, like his financial plan is going to look similar to a woman who also is the primary caretaker of the family.
The numbers are the same. Like we don't change math.
Yeah, the math doesn't change.
Planning support, yeah.
Exactly. The difference is that more women tend to be in that role. And so that's why I focus on it.
Well, yeah, you want to help, right?
I want to help, Yeah. And I mean, women in a lot of ways, when it comes to financial services, have kind of an upward climb, and it's not great. Women have been woefully underserved in the financial services market. We go to conferences and webinars and sessions, and there are still speakers and panelists at sessions that say, don't forget to talk to the wife too. When you have spouses in your office, make sure you talk to the husband and the wife, because traditionally the male advisor would sit across from the husband and tell the husband everything, and the wife would just kind of sit there.
We hear stories all the time of this individual or this family left their former advisor because that advisor would only make eye contact or speak to the husband or male partner, and would never, even if the wife asked a question, they wouldn't respond to her. They would respond to the husband. And I know you've got a ton of stories like that too. And yeah, dead on the conferences. How to talk to what? A woman? What is that?
And also, I mean, they may be drowning in home tasks, kids, caretaking, making sure the house is run. And so they're not spending a lot of time on money. And so as a couple, it's a huge risk for your wife. In hetero couples, it's a huge risk for your wife to not understand the financial part of your household. But we see it a lot where, 80, 90% of the investing decisions, the more high level strategic plan for the family is done by the husband. And the wife is kind of like, well, I hope everything's okay. I think we're saving for retirement. And she might pay the day-to-day bills. But that like high level financial plan that we would build for someone, the husband's kind of always managed that. That's a huge risk because if he passes away suddenly, she's just in the dark. She has no idea what's going on. And so that is another piece for me, is making sure that both spouses understand the plan and to meet people where they are at in their knowledge level. So he might have been picking stocks for the last 15 years in his spare time, and she was definitely not doing that. And so I want to get there, get to a middle ground and explain a financial plan to them in a way that makes sense, but also acknowledges the risks that they face. Maybe she's a stay-at-home mom. So if something happens to his income, what does that look like for her? She is going to likely live longer than him. So I'm not just looking at, is the man going to outlive the money? Is the woman going to outlive the money? What does that look like?
Is that your opener? You should know your mortality.
Yes. I always start with based on what you have submitted, I think you're going to die in this year. Yes. I always start with that.
Client situations. That's how Courtney starts every conversation.
Yes.
Is based on your actuarial table.
Yes, accurate.
So Zachary Ashburn, who was on episode 1, he's got a great name for this, and he calls it the non-financial spouse, right? Because as we know, we've worked with hundreds of households at this point. Sometimes the non-financial spouse is a male, sometimes it's female. Obviously, in a gay couple, 2 males, 2 females, like we've seen the gamut of it. And I think you can name it as there's this non-financial spouse, may or may not be male or female, doesn't really matter. But the non-financial spouse has to be brought into the process and has to be supported or have a support team in place if and when that the financial spouse, something happens to them, because they can be really left in the dark. I got a question. Do you feel like there's any, you talk about supporting women and a lot of the issues they face. What would be the difference between, let's say, like is there a generational divide between a millennial woman, a Gen X woman, baby boomer? What's your experience been on that front?
Oh, absolutely. I would say, the baby boomer generation and older, those women tend to be, to not have as much education around, financial planning, investments, that kind of thing, which is exactly what we would expect, that, those women were maybe more frequently stay-at-home parents or worked part-time to parent, be caretakers the other part of the time. Those are the folks that I generally see them have, not as much financial knowledge. And then it grows with each generation. So Gen X women have more financial knowledge than the baby boomers, but not as much as, say, like a 35-year-old millennial woman who has been busting her ass, working full time since she graduated from college and probably had a part-time job before then.
Probably has a master's degree, probably has been saving in her 401k for 15 years at this point.
And so I see women who are baby boomers, who are Gen X, that have that same level of knowledge as a woman, as a millennial. But in general terms, yes, the millennial women tend to be the most educated on some of this stuff.
The highest financial literacy, let's say.
Just financial literacy. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Yeah. Words are hard.
Words are so hard, yeah.
I tried to tell Tilda to put on her water coat today, not her raincoat. So
yeah, she knows what you mean.
Yeah, doing awesome.
Okay, so I think something we've been seeing a lot of lately is that, and actually I think this is becoming a trend that's going to grow, but we're seeing more households where the woman out earns the husband in heterosexual households. And actually we have some stats for that. So 16% of opposite sex marriages, the woman is out earning the man. Pay parity is there in about 30% of opposite sex marriages. What's your perspective on this, and what's been your experience working with couples where the woman is out earning the man? Like how has that developed in your practice?
Right. Yeah. So we definitely are seeing this more often. I would say because my practice does focus on women, that I probably see it a little bit more than maybe just like your average advisor.
Because the woman is higher earning, therefore she might be the financial spouse,
Yes.
or obviously has
Yeah.
more direct control and want to have control of her finances. So she's going to be out there hiring someone like you.
Yeah, like she's the one that does the hiring. She wants to work with another woman or at least interview other women
Hmm.
when she's looking for an advisor. That's not always the case, but is often what I see. And I'm seeing a lot more pay parity as well, not necessarily the woman making more or
Yeah.
maybe, like a little bit more, but not a huge amount. It's a
Mhm.
lot of like equal
It's
spouses.
true
Um,
professional wages coming into the household.
yes,
Yeah.
exactly. And it's interesting, anecdotally, uh, whenever a new couple comes into my office and we're talking about possibly working together, um, if the husband tells me that he picks individual stocks for their investment accounts, I always know that I'm not the person for them because I never recommend individual stocks. But I also know that like he also knows that. You know what I mean? Like he's probably not going to want to work with me. And it's
Mhm.
this really funny thing and I haven't quite figured it out. And maybe it's just because I'm like, diversify, like we don't need your individual stocks and stuff like that. And I think there is a certain amount of confidence that comes into play when it comes to picking individual stocks that,
I think it's a way of asserting control. I think anybody who does pick individual stocks, you're kind of ignoring the data on that.
mhm,
that
right.
right. So it's like you inherently have a sense of control or a want for control, and then number two, you inherently have overconfidence, an
Right.
overconfidence bias, which we know is a
Mhm.
behavioral bias from behavioral psychology. So those two things coming into play probably mean you're not going to love the idea of delegating or
Mhm.
collaborating with a really good wealth advisor.
Right. Yeah. And yeah, you said it really nicely. I never know exactly how to say when
This is a
someone has
family
individuals.
podcast, Courtney.
I know, I'm so sorry. I never how to say when someone has individual stocks, they never want to work with me. But I think I'm also like, okay, we're going to sell those and we're going to diversify,
Yeah.
and a lot of people are like, no. And it happens more often if the husband is doing it. Whereas if the
Mhm.
wife comes in or a woman is like, oh, I'm over concentrated, they see the risk of individual stocks where more often the male partner won't.
Yeah, so I mean, that's a really good question. Do you think there's some male female divides in terms of risk taking, in terms of how people think about money? Have you experienced any of that?
Absolutely. There's definitely a divide in risk taking. I experience that in my practice, like just with my own clients. But also the research has shown that as well. There has been research on this that men tend to take more risk and tend to be overconfident in the risk that they take. And women tend to take less risk and be underconfident. I see that in my day-to-day practice as well.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah. Let's pivot for a second. So you and I have worked together for nearly 20 years. Did you know that?
Yeah, I know. It's a really long
Have you
time.
done the math on that? It's almost two
Yes.
decades.
Yes, I do know how to do the math. Yeah.
All right. All right. It was a little overwhelming for me when I counted it up. I was like,
You're
oh,
so old.
I know, right? Yeah. And just so we're all on the same page, Courtney is older. I am a millennial, and she has claims to being a millennial, but she's also pretty close to a Gen X person. So she's
Yes,
much, much older than me.
I'm a zennial.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
All right. So after 20 years, and frankly, Courtney and I have this unique perspective because not only did we grow up in an entrepreneurial household, our dad was an entrepreneur and business owner. We were around that business. We each worked there, like in junior high, high school, summer jobs or whatnot. Lots of filing back in the day, and the kids probably don't even know what filing is, but there was lots of filing,
So much fun.
and filing cabinets and such.
Mhm.
So we were second generation in a family business. And then we've also been the first gen or founding generation in our current business, which is Trailhead Planners. And I think that's a really unique thing that isn't seen all that often. And I'm just curious what reflections you have on family business. Obviously, my niche is working with business owners in particular. What reflections do you have on that? And I'll just say, if you say anything negative about me, we're going to edit that out really quickly.
I am going to start with, I have tremendous gratitude to have a sibling that I'd even want to be in business with, because we both see estate planning issues among siblings on a far too regular basis, where they're, angry over how assets are getting divided up and stuff like that. And
Yeah, this could be mom or dad passes away, is
Mhm.
going to two or more siblings,
Yep.
and it becomes contentious. And we see that in our practices every once in a while.
Yeah. And so we don't have that, which I think is huge. Um, I think working with your sibling and working with anyone who you know really, really well is incredibly hard. They always joke, don't become roommates with your best friend, because you're not going to be best friends at the end of your lease. And I think that can be the case, for being in business with family as well. And I think both of us have pretty high expectations of ourselves, like internal expectations, but also, have fairly high expectations of each other, just because we know what each other is capable of. And, that can be good and bad. I think there's also an element of, where does work stop and personal begin?
Which never gets easier. You're always navigating that complexity when you're working with
Yes.
family. And I
Yes.
would just say, my joke is always, this is why Courtney and I live in different states.
Yes. Yeah,
We are
exactly.
brother and sister. We have worked together for a long time.
Yeah.
We see each other on family vacations,
Mhm.
uh, but can't pop over to the house
Yeah.
next door or down the street.
Right. And that's probably for the best.
Yeah,
I
it's
mean,
more
I'd
of a
love it.
joke than by design, but yeah,
Yeah.
that's what
I
I would
mean,
say when that
I'd
comes
love it if you and the kids and Naomi lived closer, but it would mainly be so that I could see Naomi and the kids
Yeah,
more.
I know that has nothing to do with me.
Yeah, it has nothing to do with you. I just want to be with my niece and nephew and Naomi. But yeah, I think there's definitely times where I've been like, ugh, I just want to have a brother. I don't want to have a
Hmm.
brother and a business partner.
Hmm.
And, that's hard. Like, you kind of just have to keep pushing through, even when that happens. And, other folks who aren't familiar with Minnesotans and North Dakotans, um, you will quickly learn about us that we are not the best communicators. And so I think that can be difficult as well, because
They're
a lot of
expert conflict avoiders,
we are, yes, we
top
love to be
notch.
passive aggressive and we love to
Yeah,
avoid conflict.
yeah.
Um, and that's also problematic. So, where in a family, you might just like get mad at each other, yell it out, and be
Hmm.
done. We're just not going to do that. It's going to like simmer for a while. And again, that's not a great tactic. One really good thing though is that our skill sets in a lot of ways complement each other, especially when we launched the firm. I had more of an operational background. You had more of an investing background. You were really interested in marketing. I didn't have any interest in that. And honestly, there's been times where like I'm not nearly as confident as you are, and there's been times that your confidence has carried us. and your confidence in me and the firm.
As they say, give me the confidence of a average white man. And that's what I've done.
Yeah, that's what I've done. And I think there's an element of like you always believe in me and you also always want the best for me. Obviously the same goes for you. Like I always believe in you. I always want the best for you.
Yeah, I always go back. I think a couple of things you said were so important where, if it's mom running the business, dad running the business, like there's times where I just want to be mom or I just want to be dad or I just want you to be mom. I just want you to be dad. I just want you to be my sister, brother, whatever it is. I think that probably comes up in family businesses across the country or world even. And then the one I always come back to is communication is critical. And obviously this kind of passive aggressive avoidance, conflict avoidance stuff, not helpful, right? Not helpful. But the fallback is, and I would say this about any business partner, anybody you work with, there has to be trust. And we actually have a non-family partner where there's a high level of trust between the three of us. But between Courtney and me, even when we've had hard conversations within the last business or this business, there was always this fallback of, well, we'll never screw each other over though. Like there's just always, you just trust that individual to get through whatever, you're kind of muddling through at the time. And I think that's so important. And it's a lesson for family business and it's a lesson for really any partnership or business that you're running. All right. So we've been talking about gender dynamics when it comes to managing money. But there are so many other factors at play when it comes to how we think about risk or opportunity. I think a fun one for us to consider as siblings might be birth order. So studies have shown that older siblings are less likely to take big risks. Younger siblings are more likely to do so. And more recently, there's been some scrutiny on these claims saying it's more complicated than just birth order. You're the eldest by far, Courtney. The eldest daughter, more specifically. And as I say that aloud, I keep thinking of Succession where the son is yelling, I am the eldest son. You are the eldest daughter. Do you think that makes you more risk averse?
Yes. But I also think I just was born with like an 85-year-old woman inside my body saying, don't take any risks. So, it's funny because I think about this a lot, actually, because I'm incredibly risk averse and far more risk averse than you are. And when it comes to downhill skiing is a perfect example. I hated it. I hated going fast. I hated doing anything over a blue run. And I was terrified the whole time. And I was like, it just took me 30 minutes to get my flipping gear on to be scared for the next 4 hours. Like I hated it so much. And you just would just glide down the mountain. And the thing is like, I had the skills to do it. I was athletic, but I hated it because it was scary. And I'm like, why? How does that happen? And I think some of that is being a firstborn and also the eldest daughter where your parents definitely, are more protective of you. I mean, my curfew at 18 was earlier than your curfew at 14. So there's definitely some differences.
I didn't think this would come up on the podcast.
What?
My curfew. I didn't think my curfew would come up on the podcast.
I know. Well, we were treated differently, so I'm bringing it up and putting it out into the public. Okay. I have grievances to air. No.
What's that? What's that? Yeah, we're gonna edit that out. Yep.
Yeah. Okay. But yeah, I do think about like, if I would have had an older sibling to kind of pave the way for me, would I have been more confident? Would I have been a little bit more of a risk taker? The catch to that though is I've always bet on myself. Like you would think someone really risk averse would never want to be an entrepreneur, but I actually love being an entrepreneur. And I've always, always, always bet on myself. And obviously you as well, being my family member and my business partner. And so I try to just take some of the confidence that I've built as an entrepreneur to do a little bit scarier things. I still don't go downhill skiing, but try to carry that into other parts of my life.
There's still time. Our grandpa retired and was on the ski slopes that year. So I think he was like 65 or something like that when he started.
He was
downhill
62,
skiing.
but that was
62,
back
yeah.
when lift prices were not insane then. Now I'm like,
That's true. Yeah. So now
Find
it's not
something
risk. It's more of a budgetary.
I know it's just too expensive.
That's just really expensive for something I don't really want to do.
Right. Yeah. No, thanks.
Well, this podcast is all about money with purpose, right? And I think if the purpose isn't downhill skiing, don't spend the money. That doesn't add up. Anyways, that was a great answer, Courtney. We appreciate you coming on the podcast. You can find more about Courtney on LinkedIn, where we're getting her to post more regularly. You can check her out on trailheadplanners.com. That's our website. And then she has a Substack, Court of Ideas, as well. And we'll be back here next month with a new episode. Please click subscribe. And now you know the high standard that we have for our guests. But we're also running out of Ranstrom, so we have to spread it out.
We got to branch out. I know. Thank you for having me.